Proud Boys violently attack supporters at DC area drag queen story hour.
Not the unfortunate hate and chaos that was displayed here over the weekend.
This is ridiculous. Fair turn. You should be ashamed of yourself.
This was the scene Saturday afternoon outside Loyalty bookstores on Ellsworth. Signs, megaphones, and two groups going back and forth.
We were physically preventing the Proud Boys from breaking through us and reaching those families.
Members and volunteers with Parasol Patrol DMV, a group that shields kids from protesters, were outside trying to protect families who were inside for a monthly drag story hour event. The local chapter of the organization was co-founded last year by Montgomery County Council member Kristen Mink.
It became necessary because there were protesters who were showing up trying to disrupt the events. They're scaring the children, scaring the families, shouting transphobic, homophobic slogans, and attempting to intimidate folks who were attending those events.
But this event was different.
This was the most physical that it got.
The evidence is on his nose.
Assumedly to get into and disrupt the story time.
As John Zittrauer and volunteers stood outside the bookstore trying to stop members of the Proud Boys from getting inside the event, he got hit.
In the ensuing melee, somebody tagged me either with a signpost or a hand or an elbow. I'm not really positive. And someone told me that my nose was bleeding pretty heavily.
It didn't stop there. In cell phone footage shared with Fox 5 DC, you see what appears to be a member of the Proud Boys shouting, yelling, and even stomping on one of the Parasol Patrol volunteers. Montgomery County Police were called to break up the crowd. They say no one was arrested and no reports of injuries. John tells us he didn't want to press charges.
I mean, it would have been hard enough to find out what happened because it was so chaotic, but also like my main focus and the main focus of the group was to make sure all the families were safe and the performer was safe and everybody got back to their cars okay.
Councilmember Mink says even with the disruption, the kids were safe and she believes they had a great time.
The kids who were inside had a wonderful time, a joyful time. They did the hokey pokey, they read wonderful books.
We have a large, vibrant, and supportive community which is not going to slow down or stop anytime soon.
Police in a Maryland suburb of Washington, D.C. had to intervene when violent Proud Boys tried to force themselves into a drag queen story hour event at a bookstore. Families with small children had assembled at Loyalty Books in Silver Spring to enjoy a drag queen story hour event a few days ago. Outside, far-right protesters came to demonstrate against it. One person suffered a facial injury during the standoff between the Proud Boys and LGBTQ+ supporters. Meanwhile, a counter-protest shielding the bookstore's entrance with colorful umbrellas and pride flags prevented any children from being hurt, and the event inside went on as planned. Protesters yelled anti-LGBT+ slurs and accused counter-protesters from the Parasol Patrol DMV group of being groomers. In addition to carrying rainbow umbrellas to obscure the signs to the children at the event, Parasol Patrol members played music and sang songs to drown out protesters' jeering. Montgomery Council member Kristen Mink said the situation escalated when Proud Boys kicked, punched, and shoved people. Mink herself was kicked. The far-right and some Republican politicians falsely demonized drag queens, transgender people, and other members of the LGBTQ+ community as groomers. Drag queen story hours have become targets of these far-right extremists. One thing I'd like to do tonight and going forward is I don't want to use the term far-right extremists. I think we need to use the term domestic terrorists because this is terrorism. We are being terrorized by the Proud Boys. So the Proud Boys are a terrorist organization. I'm tired of saying there's people with umbrellas shielding children from people that are carrying machine guns in these protests in the streets. So these are terrorists, and that's what we need to call them. They want to call us groomers, let's call them terrorists, because that's exactly what they are. And it's frightening to see this because, and we have to realize the Proud Boys have gone on an arc now. It went from vaccines and masks, it then went to abortion, and now it's come to us because their agenda, it really isn't specific to the LGBTQ+ community. It's to create chaos and to basically, as they tried on January 6th, overtake the government. So this is a terrorist organization trying to overthrow the government in the United States. When are we going to wake up and do something serious in this country to get rid of these attacks, not just on LGBTQ+ people, women's rights, Black, science,
Latino,
immigrants. it needs to stop, and we need to call it what it is. It's terrorism.
You know, I would say that January 6th is now their model for everything.
Yes.
You know, they've taken over the school board down in Miami-Dade County, the Proud Boys specifically as a group. And I'm watching this, and it reminds me of protests outside abortion clinics to scare the crap out of women, prevent them from going in to exercise their rights to their own health. That's exactly the same fight. It's exactly the same thing. People coming in, people escorting people into the building, people shielding them from attacks. They're using the same model over and over again. And we do, like you said, we need to wake up to what they say. And let's just be very clear. They don't give a crap about children. They don't give a damn about any child. They will use them to shield bullets before they would take one themselves.
Yeah, I want to ask to both observations and to all of you. So the issue, let's accept these observations. Why is the strength of this domestic terrorism group growing then? Why isn't the LGBTQ community just in uproar like ACT UP was on AIDS? Why hasn't the LGBTQ community responded to this overwhelmingly? Montgomery County, we appreciate the organization that is doing the Rainbow Umbrella Shields. But why wasn't there, that's Washington, D.C. Why wasn't there 1,000 people to protect those students? Why aren't we turning out?
I'm sorry.
No, last week we reported on a report about the conditions of the LGBTQ community, and we talked about homelessness. We talked about, we have so many issues that we're facing simultaneously, in addition to fighting off the Proud Boys, that it's an overwhelming time to be LGBT, queer, Latino immigrant. And from my perspective, you have to pick and choose, right? I think our livelihood is important. We have to consider all these conditions before we go and put ourselves in harm's way. And I think that has to, that has something to do with it.
But I think ACT UP is a good model because ACT UP formed in other cities. It sprung up and it was doing stuff. And maybe this Parasol group is a really good, is an idea that may catch on in other places. And as you mentioned, Montgomery County is a really progressive county. It's not the kind of place that this kind of thing would usually happen, and probably these idiots were bussed in from somewhere else, like, you know, West Virginia. Right. Probably from West Virginia.
Hey.
So,
Right.
Sorry.
Whoa.
They're probably from the Carolinas.
Yeah, okay.
From the Carolinas. That's where they're from.
Okay.
But I do want to say, I think that the media plays a role in this because, again, we're using the language that the Proud Boys were protesting a drag queen story hour. You know, during Pride events or LGBTQ events, you used to see the Bible, putting up Bible verses and those things. That's a protest. This is a terrorist organization terrorizing people. Violent. So the media is even, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about it here. Even looking at that story on the news, it kind of seemed like, well, there's one group that didn't like this drag queen story on. There's another group with Parasol.
They're equal in.
They didn't say like this is, they didn't describe the Proud Boys. Even their name sounds less threatening than they actually are. They're a terrorist organization. If you said Al Qaeda was at a drag queen story hour, what would people say?
Yeah,
terrorist.
And Al, just to your point, why aren't we standing up? Because until like recently, and maybe we still are, we're still bigger than the Proud Boys. The LGBTQ community is still bigger. 25 years ago, we were becoming ascendant. We were starting the long march towards marriage equality and all the rights that are now being tried to turn back. They're sort of following in our footsteps, taking unpopular positions, being really loud about it, and forcing their way, this time violently, unlike the LGBTQ movement post-Stonewall. They're the ones that are ascending and trying to become more powerful. So they're being louder and they're being heard. They're following our model.
One final thought on this, and to this point of domestic terrorism, I've got to really begin to process in that way. And by the way, let's put Moms for Liberty in that exact same group.
Absolutely.
Your political association matters. And we have to remember those that are associating with Moms for Liberty, Million Moms, the Proud Boys, those people that are associating with them, we should be listening to them and we should believe them.
Yes.
When that demonstration took place on Las Olas, and Proud Boys is demonstrating against the LGBTQ community, and the school board member for Broward County showed up and voiced support, that school board member of bluest of blue, Broward County School Board, is associating with the Proud Boys and Moms for Liberty to say that organization is A-OK with me, and I'm a school board member for Broward County. We should believe her. And we should be reminded, as they are domestic terrorist organizations, that this school board member is aligning with them. And this is the same organization that attacks the Capitol on January 6th. Proud Boys, you cannot believe, stand by, as Donald Trump said to them. Because if you do, they are going to be this domestic terrorist army to accomplish what they want. And Moms for Liberty, doesn't that sound wonderful, is going in right along with them.
Another thing I just wanted to, again, highlight about the Proud Boys is they're trying to ingratiate themselves into different places that they're organizing. I read an article in Vice about them that they were doing toy drives and food donations in certain places that they were rejected when it came to light. But again, they're doing these things to make them look like, oh, look, we're just like everybody else, except we're trying to overthrow the government and terrorize people. But here's some food. Here's some we got some toys for Santa.
Merry Christmas.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.